welcome to another episode of I Guess I'll Do It with Pat House, a comedy podcast where I talk to comedians about the crazy shit we do. Today, I am very excited to have my guests here. Tonight Show, Last Comic Standing, Women of a Certain Age, Netflix, Showtime, so many accolades, and her own podcast, which I recently discovered and love, The Cop and the Comedian. Today, I have Tammy Pescatelli.
Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate it. When everybody puts together your list of credits, sometimes, I don't know, does this happen to you? Like, I feel like I should have
I don't have any,
career.
No.
Wait a second. I should have a better house, I think, somehow. What happened?
You know, okay, so I wouldn't never expect you to remember this, but I hosted for you at Helium maybe 15 years ago. One of my first hosting weekends, but I remember our week in particular because I had hosted 3 or 4 times. I was brand new to emceeing, but your week was the first time I had a great set every single show. And I was like, oh, that's cool. It may have literally been my first awesome weekend where there wasn't one dud in the bunch for me. And I remember that.
You. Yeah. I'm glad. I'm sure then I had the bad set. So, because someone on the show has to have a bad set. It's just never always perfect. There's always a dud, right?
It's duds are definitely out there. But I remember feeling like validated as a comic. Like, oh my God, I had 7 shows last weekend and every single one was good.
Oh my
gosh. I vividly remember that.
7 shows. That must have been when I was selling a ton of tickets.
It may have been 5 or 6. I think it was like a Wednesday to Saturday kind of deal. God. But I do remember that being the first week, and I've been a fan of yours forever. I've always been a lifelong stand-up fan, but you were on Mark Maron, and
yes.
I loved your episode.
Thank you.
You guys had such a great chat, and then you mentioned your podcast, The Cop and the Comedian, so I immediately dove into that, and it was just an awesome, awesome chat, and I think I texted you the very next day.
Well, thank you. I've been so many people. It's funny, you can do a lot of television and you don't get the response that I got from Mark Maron's podcast. Like, he's so loved and respected and just what a solid, nice guy. Now, do you know that he made phone calls for me on my behalf? Now, nothing happened. But he went out. That's not his fault. That's more on me. They didn't want me, but he went out of his way to call on my behalf. That doesn't happen.
Wait, to have you on his podcast?
No, he called other people. Like, he called.
Oh, okay. I was like, it's weird. He's calling other people.
Yeah, he called down to Rogan and to tell Joe, you got to have Tammy on. You remember, like, we all were together, and we haven't. Now, that doesn't mean that Rogan isn't probably booked for the next century. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So who knows? Maybe we'll hear from him one random day, but it's not like the old days. Had I stayed in LA, I think things would have been different too, because everybody was starting their podcasts or whatever it was, this weird zeitgeist of, hey, let's just talk on the computer thing. And I remember Mitzi Shore telling me, what a waste of time. Use your creativity on stage. Because I was like, do you think I should get one?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows how nobody had any idea how much it would change the whole entire industry in so many levels. In so many ways. Yeah.
And, they kind of started as a little bit like, I remember Joe had a camera crew following him around anywhere. It was like a doc. It was like, what do we call them? Vlogging. And you know what I mean? Like a video.
Yeah. I remember hearing vlogging before I remember hearing of podcasting, I believe.
Yeah. It was like a vlog. And I think that was that was a very bizarre time. I've tried at different attempts to have podcasts in the past couple years. But nothing ever, I felt like I got enough of me, on stage. And I'm like, I'm not bringing anything new. If I talk to comics, other people talk to comics. What am I? And I kept trying. And then finally this hit because Laura, my friend that I do the podcast with, is a cop. We've been best friends since we were like 5-6 years old. There is so much crime in comedy. You could never believe it.
That's the best part of it. That's what I wanted to tap into exactly. So briefly, tell us the premise of your podcast. I want to hear it coming from you. It's awesome.
Well, it's called The Cop and the Comedian, a true friendship crime podcast. And basically, we talk about all the crime in comedy, which obviously from she became a cop when I became a comic. And we're like these women in these male-dominated fields. So we're both experts to whatever degree.
Yeah.
Like, we know what we're talking about when we.
But
each
you are
talk about
both absolutely experts in every sense of the imagine in both your fields. Yes.
So and by the way, she's 10 times funnier than me. Like,
You say that every episode too.
she really is, because she's got a natural. Listen, if we went to go do a set and you paid money, of course, I would hope that I'm the one that makes you laugh harder. However, she's got that naturally, constantly funny. I'm sarcastic. I have what happens when girls aren't as genetically strong as boys when they become teenagers. You know what I mean? My brothers got stronger and faster than me, but they could never outrun my mouth. I have sarcasm. I have bite. I have that where I can knock it. Like, at me and a heckler, it's just not going to work for you. If you're the heckler, like, you need to go home, rewrite your material, and come back later. Like, it's just not going to, as Eminem would say, here's a pencil. Like, it's just not going to work. But we started talking about how hard it was because she was retiring. And I was talking about, like, I don't think, odds are I'll probably never really retire because, number one, financially, I only made 50 cents on the dollar for the first 20 years of my career as guys. And then it just is what it is. I'm not complaining. I didn't know it. No one knew it. So it was what it was. And then, second of all, I mean, like, I love what I do still. So I just don't want to travel as hard.
It's just in us. Like, I'm never going to not do stand up.
Yeah. Like,
you can scale it back. I know a lot of comedians, as they get older, have scaled it back, but they're still going to do it.
Yeah, you definitely. And when something happens, like, I'll never forget the night of September 11th at the Comedy Store. Granted, there was no audience, okay? But as comics, our little gang, we didn't know what to do. So we went to the store because it was your touchstone, right?
Yeah, that's where you meet up.
And we were all standing there. There was probably, with people who worked there, not maybe 20, 30 of us, not, just the gang. And but we were getting on stage, just talking it through, because that's what it's like if you've ever been to an AA meeting, it's like that was our therapy. And I remember that night, Roseanne came in.
I was just going to ask, who is the 9/11 Comedy Store crew?
Yeah, like Roseanne. Well, it was me, Brett Ernst, Joey Diaz, John Caparulo, guys, some other people like you wouldn't necessarily know, but Brody Stevens was there. Eleanor Kerrigan was there as.
Oh, Eleanor, very good friend of mine.
Yeah,
from Philly also.
From Philly, but she was a waitress then. She was actually a wrestler then. A Women of Wrestling, right?
She's been on the pod. We talked about all of that.
Yeah, she's amazing. I maybe Joe came down. I mean, I think Andrew Dice Clay came down, another Philly guy. No, he's Brooklyn, right?
He's Brooklyn, yeah.
I can't remember.
He's around here a lot.
Yeah. Ari Shafir was it? Like, we were all kind of there just like idiots. Roseanne came down. Paul Mooney brought down Eddie Murphy. Now, Eddie didn't get on stage, and he was kind of rarefied air. Like, no one really wanted to bother Eddie. But it was like, no one knew what to do. We just didn't know what to do.
But that's a beautiful thing that everybody knew where to go.
Yeah. Well, it was home. I guess if you couldn't get home and you couldn't get to your people and you couldn't figure out like what to do. Now, granted, by the way, I went out and filled up my tank with gas. I've always been a prepper in my brain. Went and bought two things of gas to fill that up. Took every dime, which was not much. I mean, I think I only had like $400 to my name, but took it all out of the bank in case the bank systems crashed. Like, I was psycho. Filled up my tub with water. I just didn't know.
All right, so we're talking about the store now. Let's backtrack because the whole premise. No. The whole premise of my podcast. Comedians, we go on so many tangents. It's inevitable.
I know. I didn't even finish. That's stupid. The podcast basically was about I stayed with a convicted rapist.
The whole Vince Champ story.
That's how it all started.
That you told that story on WTF, and that was fascinating to me. And then when I found out about the podcast, I was driving home from Raleigh in North Carolina from Good Nights, and I binged every episode you guys had so far. And Vince Champ's story was wild, and I was a huge, huge Phil Hartman fan growing up. So like that episode really touched me as well. Episodes, there was 2 for that one.
Well, thank you. We're going to try to go back and redo some of them because I don't have a studio. I don't have a producer. I didn't know what to do. So we just recorded them ourselves. I taught myself editing as things went, and you'll notice that the production value got better and better. So I'm going to try to get those remastered or whatever we can do to fix those. So I apologize because so many
No,
people are like, oh, it's unbearable to try to listen to because this volume or the mics. But when you're just starting, I don't know how to do it. So I eventually taught myself, and we're
I
about
still don't. That's why I have Moose help me. So
I love
I still have no idea what I'm doing.
we're starting a new season next week, and we're going to get this with the different strokes
Hmm.
trilogy, which a lot of people know about, but we're breaking it down per Gary Coleman. Did you know Todd Bridges did stand up? This is what got us into the different strokes
I
thing.
did not.
Yeah, neither did I. So we're doing
No.
Todd Bridges, Dana Plato, and then Charlie Chaplin. Those are just some of the ones that kick off this new season. So
Oh, Charlie Chaplin. I read a book on him a couple years ago, and he was a horribly, miserably depressed person.
yeah, and he may.
Which is not surprising being in stand up and knowing a lot of stand ups, but like people are so surprised. But he was really, really known for being miserable off camera.
Yeah, well, he had horrible beginning.
Hmm.
I mean, he was kicked out. His father never really claimed him, and he was out on the street at age 6. So that doesn't leave a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
For and back then, kids were, back in England, they would take you in and give you food and shelter, but you'd be in a workhouse. So that's the little kids would be in the factory. So yeah, and he may or may not have been a pedophile, but he definitely was found to be an enemy of the state. In the
That
United
was not
States.
in the book, I'll tell you that.
Yes, they found it, and he went out. This is what's so interesting, and then
Yeah.
he went out. He went overseas to promote a film, and they locked him out of the country. They revoked his visa, so he could never come back in, even though he married an American woman.
Oh.
Yeah,
Well, I'm looking forward to that episode. I'll tell you that.
that's fun. Well, we're just having fun with it. And by the way,
That's the best part.
yeah, and you can attest to this because a lot of people go, "There's nothing funny about crime," or that we're not making fun of the crimes. I mean, we were making fun of each other 9 times out of 10. You know?
Yeah,
What I mean?
you're presenting the story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's nothing funny about the Vince Champ stuff.
no, but but
But in the course of a conversation, you're going to make each other laugh naturally.
yes, yeah. What is funny is that ironic is that so many people didn't know about it. Here's this guy who was the winner of Star Search, and he was one of the biggest serial rapists that this country has ever seen.
Yep, and you had to share the same comedy condo for just one night, correct?
I saw him 2 different times, but one night. And when we say comedy condo, like as I've explained before, but just for your audience, they're like flop houses. That's like pretend that you had a shared Airbnb.
There's nothing glamorous or
there's no and you have no control over who's coming in or who's coming, or a hostel, for example. Like, you just get your space. So I didn't know, and he happened to assault a woman the night that I stayed there. So it was just a game changer in my life because when you find out about that, of course, but then the FBI thought I was his girlfriend because there weren't a lot of women in comedy back then. And it was just a bizarre thing.
That is literally one of the craziest stories I've ever heard in comedy. And like I said, when I heard you tell this on WTF and talk about your own podcast, I texted you the very next day.
Yeah, I wish I would have joined the Russian mafia like Bert. It would have been easier for me.
Yeah. All right, so I love getting into people's backstory. I love finding out why all my friends and favorite comedians got into it. And I know your set is autobiographical, which I absolutely love because I've taken my act there more in recent years. But let's go back to the very, very beginning. Like when you were a child or a teenager, what was your interest in comedy in general? Did you discover stand-up young, or was it movies or TV?
I didn't discover stand-up young because I really am 100% Sicilian, and we're a miserable people. I mean, like they're just miserable. Like you can't laugh too hard. They're worried about getting the Malloy, they call it the evil eye. But then that we laughed at the most inappropriate things. We
Yes.
laughed at funerals, and the uncles would come and everybody be laughing at funerals. So it was such an odd dichotomy. And I loved the sound because it's easy to translate that even a child can figure that after someone is laughing, they're in a better mood, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
my mother was happier. My father was happier. Everybody was happier after funerals, weirdly. So it kind of clicked in my brain a little bit.
Yeah.
So and then I liked TV show comedy, right? Honest, Happy
Sitcoms.
Days, Laverne and Shirley, yeah, like Fred Sam, or Sanford and Son, The Jeffersons, things like that. I didn't know too much about stand up until I started staying a lot. My mother got sick, and I started staying with my grandparents a lot, and I spent a lot of time. Like I basically lived with them, and my grandmother couldn't sleep at night, and she would watch the Tonight Show, and she would let me listen to Johnny Carson's monologue. Like you're a kid and you don't really understand all but some of them are basic and funny. You know who the president is, and when they're making fun of the president, it's funny,
Yes.
and it's not political. It was just funny and just goofy things. So that started me on all laughter. And I told a joke. I'll never forget. I told this. Back then, you could tell ethnic jokes. Everybody told it. Everybody got it. Every ethnic group told them about the other group, and it wasn't racial. It was just
Yes.
like, okay, if you knew someone of another ethnic group, you went to them and you told them that joke, and then they turned around and told you a joke, right? But I'm a little kid, so I told a Polish joke to my neighbor at 6 years old, Mrs. Suplinski, who
SKI.
right. And she literally beat the hell out of me all the way home to tell my mother, who then was embarrassed, and she hit me but I realized that it like evoked emotion. So I
Yeah.
would always try to say something funny whenever I could from that point on. And then, I found Eddie Murphy. I was like in 8th grade, and a friend of mine's older brother had the tape, and I asked him to dub it for me and went and listened to it in my house, and that was it. Like I was hooked. Bill Cosby, sadly, Philadelphia,
Yeah.
but okay.
Temple University. I met Bill Cosby a week before I started doing stand up.
Wow. I met him when I used to do. I was for a while. I was doing. I did an open mic. I'm skipping it, but and then was sponsored by a radio station, and I was doing morning show and learning how to be a house MC. And we brought him in to talk to us, and he was very nice and he was very kind. And he told me that if I started to travel, never let and was on television, never let the maid in your room, because they'll see you on TV and think that you're rich and steal your stuff because they think you have money. And he invited me to the show that night, but I couldn't go because I had a station obligation. So
Wow.
maybe I'm saved. I don't know.
That's some unique advice. I heard something very similar one time. Somebody told me if you're doing a high paying gig and you get to the hotel, ask to switch rooms. So the people that booked the gig don't know you're in the room that they had booked for you. I've never done that. I've never had to do that.
That's kind of neat. That's those old. That's if you get paid in cash, and that was probably given to you by
20 years ago.
Yeah,
by an older comic.
Yeah, who makes a lot of money.
Probably. So what was your very first open mic, or what was the moment where you said, "Oh, I'm going to try this. I just want to try it." That's why it's called I Guess I'll Do It with Pat House, because it's the I guess I'll do it.
Yeah, I mean,
every comic has that moment where it's like, I'm going to do this.
That's true. I guess I'll do it moment was I was hanging out with my family. They had moved from Ohio. It was right after college. I was supposed to go to New York. I had a fashion design degree, and I was supposed to go there and do an internship. So I had like that 3 months, and that 3 months at age 21 in a new place, you don't really know anybody. It's hard to meet, friends. I was trying to make some money, and they had a comedy club, and I thought, well, let me go there. I love stand up. Let me go in and I'll be the world's worst waitress but make some money. Maybe I'll make some friends. And a woman came through, and that's kind of was like a weird, that moment when girls are in the vampire movies and they look at him, they go, "What are you?" It was my kind of "what are you" moment, because I was introduced to the 3-person show, the MC, the feature, and
Yep.
the headliner. And a woman came through and she was like, at the time, I'm 21, 22, right? 22. She's probably not much older, 24, 25. And she's the MC, and God bless her, but I did not think that she was that funny. And honestly, neither did the audience. So I'm not. And, but
been there a million times.
right. We all have had, and I also don't know how far she was into her career. Clearly she couldn't have been too far. And I also know how hard it is now it's the hubris of not knowing what you're talking about and just talking out loud. And, I said, I went home and my brothers, everybody's asking me like, how was it? Who's there this week? And I'm like, well, there's a girl there. And, I think I'm as funny as she is. And then they were like, bet. And then for $50, I did the open mic the following Monday, and it was sponsored by a radio station.
Did you have stuff written, or were you just riffing?
I had a few things written, because everybody does. I always say this to people when they go, well, I can't do what you do. You might not be able to do it to what I do at this level, but everybody has a few of those funny stories that they tell at parties or comebacks or.
You always have some stuff in your back pocket. We all do. Yeah.
And I was the queen of the comebacks. I literally was, you have to remember, I'm 22 years old. So we're talking about 1994, right? 93, 94. And I'm like, I'm I have a big nose, big eyes, big lips, big boobs. I do but a lot of women didn't have that back then. It was way before everybody got a boob job for graduation. And,
graduation.
Right. And, they literally, people would say to me at a nightclub, are those real guys? And I'd be like, don't you think if I'd have had that kind of money, I'd have had my nose fixed first? And then it took this weird moment into a funny moment. And then it was like my boom, and I could walk away from an idiot. You know what I mean? And so that was one of the jokes I told. And then I told a story about my grandfather.
That is a great line for someone who's new into it. It's creative, it's original, it's personal. That's just a great, funny line.
Yeah. And thank you. So my first open mic was really good. It was only like 3 or 5 minutes. It wasn't very long, whatever time they give you. And then the radio station that sponsored it asked me to come in and like be the sidekick and laugh. It was so bizarre. Like my opportunity.
Right off that first time?
Yes.
Wow.
However, my experience of what the hell that I went through was ridiculous because, you think that trolls are bad now. They used to have to dial, 9 digits, 10 digits.
Make a phone call for it.
The phone call, right? It was 7. I don't even think that there was the area code involved then. And so by the time they finished dialing, they were really pissed to tell you how stupid you were because you pronounced Greenwich Village like Greenwich because you're reading and it's 5:30 in the morning and I have been out since 3:30.
Where was this first open mic? Because you're Cleveland based, right?
I'm Cleveland born and raised, but my parents had moved to a place called the Quad Cities while I was away at college, which is Iowa and Illinois border. So it was in they lived in Davenport, Iowa, but my show was 15 minutes across the bridge in Moline, Illinois. So
okay.
Yeah. And then I did that. I was the house MC at the Funny Bone. That Funny Bone was owned by the same people that own the Cleveland Improv. I was like, I'm going to move back to Cleveland. And I went downtown Cleveland. I did that for like 2.5 years. And then I moved downtown Cleveland and I was there until I moved to LA in 2001. So
was Hilarities around then?
Yeah, Hilarities, all of them. I was very lucky because I could.
Was it still both. Nick?
It was still
Nick. Mm-hmm. Nick is one of the. His name has come up a lot on this podcast. He is one of the absolute nicest and best people to ever own a club.
Yes, fantastic. Nick and Mitch Kutash, who owned all those, and I was very lucky because they allowed me to be the house MC in Cleveland, and then immediately they owned all these Funny Bones. At the time, they were all connected. I think there were like 24, 25 of them. So I could go out 2 or 3 times a year as an MC. Now, granted, I'm not going to lie to you. I only made like $7,000 my first year in comedy, but I worked like 38 weeks, which can you imagine back then was huge.
That is huge. And also, especially when you're like emceeing makes you good. You bite the bullet, you eat it up front. The crowd hates you. You fuck up the headliner's intro, but you learn.
I know. And the
And
woman,
38 weeks is amazing for an MC, and that's an awesome grind right off the bat.
it was really, really tough. But I mean, and I met everybody, like the people that I met, some people when I was in the Quad Cities and at the radio station and working at that Funny Bone, and I'd bring them in and talk to them. And then I'd also, so when I moved to Cleveland and I'd see them, they were like, okay, she's really doing it. And then those people really, Dom Irera, they're people I wouldn't have a career if it weren't for them. Dom.
Dom has my first couple years in stand up monumental to me.
Yeah.
He brought me to a couple Heliums. He brought me to the Stress Factory. He would have me MC for him at Helium year after year. He was one of the people from the get-go who has been very good to me.
Yes. I mean, there are people like that change, that are game changing in your life. John Panette was another one of those for me. God rest his soul. Phenomenal.
Lived in my neighborhood, never met him, but he literally lived 3 minutes from my parents.
Wow. Must be
crazy.
The Philly thing. Then let's see, who else took me? DL Hughley took me out. George Lopez, like people, I was just really, really lucky to have some help where people were like, hey, come open for me.
Every single comic I've had on this podcast has had a story where somebody took them along on the road or just got them gigs when they came through town. And it's just the best feeling in the world when the headliner brings you, gives you the weekend shows, or even better, just be like, hey, well, how about Phoenix and Kansas City with me? And you're like, what? And there's just no greater compliment to when someone in those early days swoops you up.
Yeah, well,
brings
you're
you
right.
around.
It's number one, it's a letter of recommendation. Number two,
Yes.
back in my day, like when we started, the great part about the comedy condos was the camaraderie. And if you would, most of us were driving who weren't headliners. So a bunch of us MCs and features who worked parallel would get together on the Sunday or Monday or Tuesday that things were closed somewhere, and we'd all cross going different directions, but we'd be somewhere for like a day. I'd have a VCR, they'd have a VCR, we'd make tapes, because you had to make tapes. You had to have 2 VCRs to dub tapes. You had to share the contacts, the addresses for the club. Who do I mail this to?
Walk to it, yep.
So when someone would pay you to go out to these clubs, they actually it was like literally they not only paid you for that week, but they really were investing in your career. They didn't even realize what they were doing, because it allowed you to get in front of those people, which probably brought you work. I mean, for me, I was lucky. It definitely brought me work.
Wow. Okay, so Cleveland to LA, that was your next career move?
Yeah, 2001. I think I'd done everything I could do. Plus, I was just ready. I think if I'd have went to LA any earlier, I would have got burnt out, but I had worked my way up. I was like a split week feature in B rooms, or, in A rooms, I was a split week feature. In B rooms, I was headlining, but, we're talking low money, $800 a week, like 50 million shows.
Yeah.
And it was probably stupid to move then in a weird way, because, in order to stay a comic, I had to really go out on the road, since that's how I was paying my bills. I would suggest if someone was a new comic, they'd go a little bit earlier where it's not fully just comedy. Like, I mean, I had a million little things I did to supplement my income back in Cleveland. I made their Italian cookies called pizzelles before there was coffee chains. And
yeah,
I would take them to these coffee shops and give them some and say, if you sell them, let me know. And I take order. And then I was making like 1,000 cookies a month, like literally sitting there every day, like, putting them in tubs, making them and bagging them up and taking them to. But I moved out there, and I was very lucky because I had been an improv in Cleveland girl and some of the other improv club. I was immediately able to be a regular at the Hollywood Improv. And I didn't just jump to LA. For 3 years prior, I would go out there for stretches at a time.
Yes.
So I was already a regular at the Hollywood Improv, which was great. Then I got passed at the Comedy Store and the Laugh Factory, and the Ice House in Pasadena was part of my rotation too. And then you go down to Hermosa Comedy and Magic, and that's how it kind of gets a little bit better in comedy for you to stay home and pay your bills a little bit.
When you first moved to LA, who was like your tight crew of friends?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, the Comedy Store became my home, and it really was. Craig Robinson, Brett Ernst. I can't say Brett and Sebastian Maniscalco were like my
Uh-huh.
day ones. Steve
Sebastian has been
Easy.
very good to me over the years. I was with him a lot when he was at the tail end of clubs jumping into theaters. He used me a lot around that time.
Oh, that's fantastic. And
Yeah,
of
it
course,
was wild to see, even from my perspective.
isn't that
Like,
crazy?
yeah.
Dom Irera, definitely. Dom always, he had a fiance that was my best friend. There was a woman who's the booker at the Hollywood Improv. Her name was Rita Piazza. At the time, she was dating Pablo Francisco. They were like my family. Probably, Carlos Mencia was good. I'd always get invited to his kids' birthday parties. I mean, the nice part was just that you always had, if you were at the club, you always had someone that was your love. Kathleen
Yeah.
Madigan was one of my best friends for the longest time. So we just had a really tight crew.
That's awesome. And then, okay, so where did Last Comic Standing come in? Because I was a stand-up fan. I watched all the premium blends and Comedy Central Presents, but I loved Last Comic Standing because I was introduced to new people, how I discovered you,
Ah,
and so many other comics I still love to this day. Like, I absolutely love Bonnie McFarlane and
yeah.
Gary Gulman.
Yes, yes.
And both of them I know very well. And it's just that show in particular really escalated my interest and love of stand-up. So I would love to hear, how that meant for you.
Well, I had really not, I mean, I had not done much. I had worked my butt off in the grassroots campaign out on the road. But, when I got to LA in 2001, I did Just for Laughs, and I got an agent and stuff finally in 2002, agent and manager. I ended up doing the Tonight Show. I had one credit to my name. I had never done any television until I did the Tonight Show. That was my first TV thing. And I had won a contest that was supposed to give me a premium blend, and they didn't end up giving me the premium blend. It was so stupid. It was the Bud Light Ladies of Laughter in 2000, and which should be called the Bud Light Ladies of Laughter on my Wikipedia, but idiots change it to the Bud Light Ladies of Lather. So, yeah, it's so stupid. Um, that's why you can never believe Wikipedia. So I was really, I didn't know what I was getting into with Last Comic, but I had seen season one, and those guys did well. Rich and Chris Porter and Corey
Oh,
Kahini.
I was just with Chris last weekend. He's a
Yeah,
good buddy of mine.
they
We just
really,
did Philly together.
and Ralphie and Dat, and they did very well. And I wasn't sure I wanted to, reality was new. I didn't know if I wanted to be on, but when I saw the caliber, it was Kathleen. It was, think about our season. You mentioned Bonnie and Gary, Todd Glass there from Philly, Corey Holcomb, Alonzo Bowden, John Heffron,
Heffron,
Jay
yep.
London, Ant, and me. Like, that was like the craziest group. I had the least amount of credits of anybody in that whole group. So I was really excited to be part of it.
Is Jay London still around? He's the only name I know. Well, I watched the show, and I know every single person you just mentioned, but
Yes.
Jay London is the only person I haven't even heard of in forever, and he had incredible one-liners, which is an art form into itself.
Brilliant. I mean, everybody will quote to me at some point within 2 times, 3 times a year. Someone will come up to me and go, "Hey, how's that guy, the ladder guy?" And the joke was, "This is my step ladder. I never knew my real ladder." Hysterical.
I always think of, you may recognize me as third from the left on the evolution chart.
Yes, and they
Yeah.
ripped him off when they did that caveman thing. They blatantly ripped him off. I was so hurt for him.
Geico, you mean?
Uh,
Like the Geico commercials ripped him off?
Well, no, when they did the Geico, I don't know if Geico did it, but
Because they had it's so easy a caveman could do it. I wonder if that was connected at all.
I don't remember if it was that or if it was like the promo for, remember when they had the caveman TV show? I can't remember, but they really,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. But I haven't seen Jay in a long time. He was a Comedy Store brother, and a Dublin's guy. We all went to Dublin's on Tuesdays and crushed it all out too. I haven't seen him in a long time, but I did speak to him, I guess, somewhere between now and the pandemic. and just called him out of nowhere, and he answered the phone, and I just wanted to hear his voice, and he's
Oh, that's
doing
awesome.
well.
Cool. Well, I'm glad he's at least still around.
Yeah, I don't know. He had put comedy down for a little bit, but he said that he was going to get back into it.
Also, do you keep in touch with the other cast members at all? Or just in the normal comic way where you cross paths and months go
Uh,
by, then you catch up, and then it's like you
I'm
never stop
always,
talking?
yeah, I'm always owing Bonnie a phone call and a catch up. I talk to Alonzo and John Heffron and Ant the most. I'll
Okay.
reach out to Gary. Gosh, I love to see Gary's success. His
Mm-hmm.
success to me is just so phenomenal.
Did you read his book?
I did not read his book.
It was very good. It was very good. I actually managed to kill the whole book off in a rainy weekend in Buffalo. And had the weather been nice, that wouldn't have happened. So
Ah,
I blame shit weather and time on my hands to kill that whole book in one weekend. Otherwise, I would probably still be thumbing through it.
I did buy it. What's happening to me is, I'm just going to be really honest. My
Dial me.
eyes are changing, and I love to read, but I refuse to put on those cheater glasses because I
Uh,
already have such horrific vision that I have to wear like contacts 24 hours a day. I'm literally like Velma from Scooby Doo. Like,
you're
yeah, it's bad. Like literally, I told you I'm kind of like psycho on prepping things, that when the whole thing went down with COVID and the lockdown, I went and bought out, there was a eye doctor place that was closing, and I bought um their entire like lot of contacts, glasses that aren't my size, aren't my prescription, whatever, but I bought them because I said, if things go down and there's an apocalypse, people are going to need to see, and I will be specs in the apocalypse. I'm going to trade these for currency, and they're not in my house. If anyone's listening, they're in a storage unit that has all my other stuff in it, and you're not going to get it. So there you go.
I think you're the first doomsday prepper comic I've had on here.
I don't know that I'm a doomsday prepper,
Well,
but
you did say apocalypse. It's kind of the same shit,
I
right?
guess you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. I guess you're right. You know what it is? Once you live with the serial rapist for the night, like you share a home, for like not on purpose, but whatever, like you realize that you've slept next to that. I think you're just always,
Prepared. I
yeah.
can't even imagine
I'm like,
how
I
that.
better find my exits, and it just changed my way of thinking. Like,
Brush up on my Star Search knowledge in case I run into
yeah,
another former.
so true, so true.
All right, this episode is brought to you by Magic Mind. Like most comics, like most people, I struggle with being productive, just sitting down and doing the work. I am fidgety. I open the notebook and then do 55 things, but the people at Magic Mind have a great thing to help. After my morning coffee, I take it. It gives me the perfect little afternoon chill while also allowing me to be productive. Little tiny bottles, perfect for one shot. They have energy, and they make you feel calm and relaxed. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. You can get 56% off when ordering in the next 10 days by using promo code DOIT20. That is DOIT20, all caps, at www.magicmind.com. Make sure you check them out. It is a part of my daily routine. Your episode of Women of a Certain Age was absolutely fantastic. You were with an absolute killer lineup. Thea, Julia Scotti, and Carol Montgomery's a very good friend of mine. She is almost like a comedy mother to me. Her and I go way, way back, and I love when her and I cross paths.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Caroline Ray was on that. Caroline Ray is a murderer, and
Mhm.
like people forget that because they see her as Sabrina the Teenage
the
Witch of
sitcom
the
stuff.
Dance. Yeah, they forget, like, because she's so castable, and it's so funny. But yeah, she's just a murderer. So
All of those murderers. I've seen Julia Scott. I mean, she's also local here. She's New Jersey, but Philly enough. We have done shows where she fucking ripped the room off of the place.
that's awesome.
And Thea, I have a crazy Thea story. I was on vacation. I was officiating a friend's wedding on a cruise, and I'm on vacation. I have to officiate the wedding, but I'm on a cruise ship with a bunch of friends, and I am off. I am not doing stand-up. I am on vacation. First day on the ship, I'm like, is that Thea? We're walking down the hallway facing each other, and I introduce myself. I'm like, hey, I'm a comic. I grew up watching you. Huge fan. And next thing you know, we're having lunch every single day, talking shop in the middle of the ocean. It was
Oh,
so
that's
cool.
awesome.
We hung out at least 4 or 5 days on that cruise, grabbed lunch. I watched all of her shows, and I just remember us sitting at lunch one day, going back and forth with our favorite Mitch Hedberg jokes. And that's
Oh,
my favorite Thea memory.
Mitch was so good to me. That's
Yeah.
another living in those condos. Like that's another. I mean, I enjoy every time I knew I was going to work with Mitch. I loved being in the condo with him. It was comfortable. It was fun. It was funny. And I also started leaving all my clothes in my trunk because he would have a menagerie of people that would show up and just sleep
Oh,
on our couch.
yeah.
He was a good hearted guy, you know?
I've met him. I never worked with him, but I had the chance to meet him, and he was
Wow.
super nice. But a lot of people that have come on the podcast and people that I also know and talk to at comedy clubs have had nothing but like amazing things to say.
He really was it's a true shame and a tortured artist. And hold on, I'll show you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'll show you. Let's see. This is one of my prized possessions. I got this for doing the tribute show to him. It's a box set for those who can't see, but it's a box set of every single one of his albums. And it's in vinyl, and I literally bought a record player to play it.
Oh, that's cool though. And vinyl's making a comeback. A lot of comics sell vinyl.
Look what else I have. Hall and Oates. They're separated now. They hate each other. This
Hall
is
and
probably
Oates.
going to be worth a lot of money. Just
For the millionth time. Also from Philadelphia.
Wow. Who knew? Who knew? Who knew?
Were you all right, this is probably a dumb question. Were you on that Mitch Hedberg tribute show? Because I have a flyer from that night. But I can't remember the names on it.
I would assume so if it was the one in New York that was put together by the New York Comedy Festival.
No, this was the one from Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't.
Okay, it's the brochure or the little flyers
I
blue.
couldn't afford when Mitch passed. I don't think I can't remember. What year did he pass?
Shortly after I started doing stand-up, I want to say March of 05 or 06. Like literally almost 20 years.
Yeah. I forgot. I was just
crazy.
busy with something. Yeah. So not that I was too busy to go there for a friend, but also I don't know that people really knew our friendship as much because it was in the condos. You know what I mean? I never get the calls for those. I was so close with Patrice O'Neill. He used to stay in my house in LA when he came to LA to work, and I'd be on the road. So I mean, it's not that I would see him or anything, but he used to stay at my place. But I never get called to do the Patrice O'Neill benefit because I don't think anybody really knew how close we were, because it's not, you have friends with people that you don't, you're just friends with, we did a couple of shows together and we just always communicated, but it's not something like you're hanging out on a random Sunday telling everybody.
It's such a small world. People don't even realize how tight you cannot see anybody for years and years and years. I mean, we haven't seen each other face to face in years, but once you get rolling, there's so many connections behind the stage, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
That's a horrible phrase. I don't know where that came from.
No, but I know what you mean. Though it really are like,
it's just a crazy small world. It really is.
Comedy is super, super, super small. Although it seems like there's more people who call them self-comedians than ever, which I do think there are.
Thank you, TikTok.
Yeah, and you know what though, there's room for that.
There is.
If they're going to stay in
different market. Don't call yourself a stand-up if you're not live on stage in front of an audience.
Well, I feel also too like TikTok. There's a woman right now that I saw that she's like really appealing to Gen X, and she is literally regurgitating any comic from mine to John Heffron to Greg Warren to like.
I know who you're talking about. I've seen her do it with Chris Porter and a Chad Daniels thing recently.
Yeah, I can't take it, and I can't be the arbiter of comedy. I can't go after it again. I can't believe that no one. And she actually even just did a whole Joan Rivers thing. I was appalled. But they don't know it. People don't know it, so they think it's all brand new. That's the hardest. That's what scares me. With the onset of AI trying to tell you jokes, and then people taking, Like, it's, I understand too. There are only so many jokes in the world. Trust me. I get it. I get it more than most. However, it's just the order of the jokes because that belies the thought process. It's the word pentameter that makes us who we are.
Yes.
That's the difference.
Yeah, it's a wild shift in comedy. I don't want to say since the pandemic, but I mean, in a way, when we all had to do comedy or not do comedy, or when comedy shifted to online, I guess it all came out of that pandemic era where shit just got weird.
Well, I was just explaining this because I would really right now I have this weird troll. I don't even know what to call it. Someone spoofed my account.
Okay.
And went on other people's accounts like reality show stars and said a whole bunch of mean stuff. Okay. It's not funny, but I just don't understand. I laugh because I wish I had the time.
Who has the time? That was the first thing I was going to say.
I'm not laughing because it's not funny at all. It's really horrible. The stuff that they were saying is horrific. And it's absolutely mind blowing because you can't prove it's just, and people are going like, well, how do they spoof a blue check mark? How the hell do I know? I don't even know how I got a blue check mark. Maybe it's not. I don't know what the hell you want from me. So I wanted to really shut my social media down. But you can't. And
No,
because
you can't.
I have the appropriate number of followers that will buy tickets for my show. I don't have inflated numbers. It's just regular. But I remember it's almost like you went to sleep during the pandemic, and I had great social media numbers for 2020. Okay. And then I came out of it, and all of a sudden, this one's got 100,000, this one's got 1 million, this one's got and they're literally doing 10 seconds. And I'm like, your whole career, 30 years, 4-hour specials, hundreds of appearances on talk shows, and that is just boiled down to how many followers you have, and you can't back it up. The only thing you can do is hope that the people show up to your show.
Yes.
And then they continue. I've often said, I don't sell thousands of tickets, but I have sold thousands of tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's a great way to phrase it. Yeah.
And I will continue to sell thousands of tickets until I finish this career, to the day I put it down, because I always give my audience the exact thing that they came to see. Me, new material, my same persona that they liked enough to come, and hopefully they
you.
Yeah.
They're buying tickets to see you. All right, I want to bring up one thing here, and you're going to have to guide me through this because I don't know all the details, and I remember seeing you post about it on social media. Did you have a show maybe a couple years ago where someone threw something at you, or there was a crazy crowd, or...
Yeah, so
okay,
I think it was...
Yes, walk me through this, because I was attacked on stage one time, beer bottle thrown at me, punched in the face, my dad tackled that guy, crazy scenario, and I don't recall the details of your story, but I remember hearing... or seeing you tweet about it or post about it on Facebook and being like, oh my God, what the fuck happened here?
Yeah, it was, I can't remember the year. I think it was 2013.
Oh, we're going that far back. Jesus.
It was way before, my son was young because he was at home. Okay.
Oh man. In my mind, this was just 2 or 3 years
ago. No. That's how bad people have been acting out for a long time. And no one.
Well, true. My incident was 2008. So.
Yeah, they've been acting badly for a long time, and no one takes it seriously. So on Tuesday of that week, there was a heckler who stood up. It was the craziest week for comic, who stood up in the middle of Daniel Tosh's set and said something about there's nothing funny about rape, just
the rape incident, yes,
and whatever happened. So then he got that was on Tuesday. On Thursday, I was in Jacksonville, Florida.
Comedy Zone.
Yes. And for those people, people picture the story, exactly what I'm talking about. But when they picture it, they don't understand. So I'm going to set the scene. It's a big room, but there's a very small stage. Mm-hmm. And all the tables are bingo style, meaning all connected towards the stage. So if you want to get up, you got to walk backwards through all this stuff. And there was a woman who was literally sitting in the front row. So basically, she was on stage. And she was giving a hard time to the MC. She was giving a hard time to the feature, that she was loud, she was talking, she was toasting, doing shots on her phone, drunk, 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 drunk. It's the world.
Awful.
Awful, awful, awful. The world has been ruined by drunk women who are too old to strip. It's literally, that's what's ruined the world. Not
Thank you for
anything else.
phrasing that so perfectly, because you are 110% correct.
They just need so much attention. I think I'm going to open glamour shots again because I think that's what they need. I mean, we have OnlyFans, but nobody's signing up for them. So this woman wouldn't stop. And I'm not, listen, I'm really strong with hecklers. We've already told it, but
Yeah.
I also recognized that she was too drunk, that I wasn't going to get, and they clearly weren't going to throw her out because they didn't want to walk her down the aisle
and really cause a scene.
And they had no security. That's one of the problems nowadays. If you go to a club, and yes, I'm a woman, but they had all women working there, not even a guy in the kitchen. No. And it's just a very different. Sometimes you need the muscle, or you need a really big woman. Okay. Like,
yeah,
a big woman. That's it. That's fine.
Just somebody to enforce some rules.
Need somebody who's big. I don't care what their gender is. You need a Neanderthal of any gender, at least one in every club. And because they just, like, she should have been thrown out way before I got on stage. And I decided, I had some friends from high school who I hadn't seen in a long time. And I just wanted to give them a really good show because they had just went through something. Like, a parent had died and it was just rough. And I was like, I'm not going to play with this woman because I know she's going to steal it. Like, that's what happens. People don't understand with hecklers. They steal your time. They steal the audience's time. Like, I know a lot of kids do crowd work now, but that's, if you have real material that people are paying for, they came to see your material. They want to hear about my grandfather. They want to hear about my brother. They want, so.
How long you guys been married? What do you do?
Yeah, I don't have, and that's fine. It's just not my, it's not my
It's not mine either, so I have strong opinions on it.
It's just not my style. And I also just know that, let me tell you something, women get confrontational. I know how it's going to go. Like, I know that I'm going to get her and she's going to get upset, and then she takes it personal. And then I know that it always ends up with, I'm a bitch and I'm not funny. That's it. That's how it always ends up. Yep. Like, it's never been different. That's the end. I've seen this movie a million times. Okay. Just the character is different. The person playing the role is different. It's like going to see a Broadway play. They're subbing someone in, but it always ends the same.
Yeah.
So I tried to ignore her as much as I could because she was annoying the audience too. Okay. Just so you know, and when the audience kind of gets together as a group and you can tell that she's distracting them. So at one point, she's literally, I'm ready for the dismount. I'm 10 minutes away. And she pulls out her phone and she's watching something super loud on her phone in front of me. And everybody can see it. So I say, hey, can you watch TV when you get home? I'm like, I'm sure, I don't know if you pay for, like, whatever. I don't know if you pay for cable or you tap into the trailer next to you, but, like, can you just wait till you get home? She goes, I'm watching porn. I said, well, apparently you didn't hear all the stuff because I used to do, it was a love letter to women, but I used to do this whole thing, the Save a Hoe Project. And I used to talk about all these things about class and dignity. I go, apparently you never heard me talk anything about what I said about being a whore. You should have paid attention. Everybody's laughing. I go, that's okay. And I kind of turn my head and I just hear this. I have superhuman hearing. I hear this whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. This woman not only she didn't chuck a glass like the wine on me, like you do, like I'm offended. She chucked her glass at me that it spun around, hit the bricks behind me, only barely moved. The stem of it's shattered. The stem hit me. I'm soaked in red wine. I look like, Carrie. Prom. I'm literally having, like, they say you can't hold two thoughts at once, but I'm thinking if I hit her with the bottom of this mic stand in the head, I'll lose my house. I see this group of guys who are soldiers that I had entertained in Afghanistan that came to support me. There was a young group of Black women that had been my friends throughout the show. Like I was we were having a good time. I see these two groups get up like they're going to converge on this girl, right? So then I realized I have to be the peacemaker in this act. And I was like, and she sits down though. By the way, she's sitting. Like when you just throw it and get up, like you're making that big of a statement.
She's making it casual.
Yeah, like go on, you chuckle fuck. Like I go, oh, that's it. And I literally, at that point then, I insulted her from 4 generations back and the next 3 to come. Like I put a curse on her uterus. Like I called her every name in the book. I really, but finally they pull her out. And, okay, they pull her out. But I then have to do another 15, 20 minutes because I see they have the cops out there and everybody's going to pass her. And I'm trying not to create more of an issue, right? Cops Ziploc her, put her in the back of the zip tie her, put her in the back of the.
I prefer Ziploc.
I like Ziploc too, right? And they put her in the back of the car. And then all of a sudden the sergeant comes, they cut her loose and I go, what's going on? And he's like, well, what do you want from this? And I go, I don't want anything. He goes, you looking for money? I go, no, she assaulted. I have glass in my eye. Like, he goes, you should expect this at your job. I go, what? He goes, you work in a bar. Okay. First of all,
just when you think it couldn't get worse.
It was horrific. I go, well, I want a citizen's arrest then. And he goes, we're not doing that down here. This is Jackson. He goes, if you got a problem with it, go see the county solicitor tomorrow. And I just like went back to my room like an idiot, called a couple people, called that guy who, one of the guys who was an owner in the Buffalo Improv at the time, or this Buffalo Funny Bone, talked to my friend Kathleen, Matt, like everybody. And then everybody started calling me going, you got to go there. You got to set a precedent, because what the club owner told me was if that stem wine glass would have hit a patron, then they'd have been liable. Like we'd all been liable, and they don't want to set that precedent. Like the club should have thrown her out, but then now I could have been sued. It was like insane. So, oh, by the way, the cop also said to me, what did you say to her to get her angry? I said, listen, stop. I go, I called her everything, but after. Meanwhile, I'm drenched, by the way. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not looking like fresh, like I didn't shower and speak to him.
Hey, you're covered in Cabernet.
Okay. So, and I saved this broad from getting her ass handed to her. So I end up going the next day, and they don't want to hear it. The solicitor went and see me, sent me with an assistant, told me that, should I not expect this at my job? Again, they did that. Asked me if I was drunk. Had I been drinking? I said, are you like, what reasonable expectation? I said, then, so why is there assaulting a police officer? Shouldn't they expect that at their job? Like, and clearly my best friend's a cop. Like my best friend's a cop. I'm a law enforcement enthusiast. Like I'm not, but I just don't understand what was happening down there. The next day, so they don't even want to take it. They take the thing, whatever. The next day, that night, Eddie Griffin, something happens to him on stage, and he ends up, so like all of a sudden the New York Times is like, what's going on? They get a hold of it. I had wrote a whole thing on my Facebook about it. They pick all that up. All of a sudden Howard Stern's talking about it, The View's talking about it, and I get a phone call from the solicitor going, okay, what do you want us to do? And I go, well, I want a restraining order against this woman, and I want you to charge her with something. I don't care what it is, because they told me that if I would have hit her, because that's what I said at the solicitor, I go, I should have just hit her then. And they said, oh, that's inciting a riot. So then they told me they had no witnesses. So I just had to get on and go.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, here's all the people. I just put a all points bulletin out. We're at the show. Let's talk about. And by the way, no one forgets when they see the comedian that they came to see be
getting assaulted.
Yeah, they're just not. So anyway, I don't ever know what happened. Turns out she was a confidential informant. She'd been arrested hundreds of times on soliciting, and she probably lived on Epstein Island for all I know. I don't know.
I just remember you posting about that, and I had an incident as well. I'm not going to get into the whole entire thing, but I am true when comics have shit like that go down, like with Ariel Elias and at Uncle Vinny's Comedy Club and the Trump, like when shit goes down like that, I am all in because it's shit happens in the comedy clubs, but some comics have dealt with some extra fucking crazy.
But you know what it is too? Like sometimes you can't stop that from happening. Because I know at Uncle Vinny's, Dino is on it. Dino doesn't let anybody do anything. He's fantastic. That place, they should have stopped it. I know they didn't have the wherewithal. They weren't on it. But there needs to be a time where now I'll play with people. I put Roadhouse rules in it. Like I'm good until I'm not. And you'll know that because I will then literally try to get them on my side, try to get them to calm down, literally put your head down and rest. I don't care. I don't need you to like me. I don't care. Just don't disturb other people's time.
Don't ruin it for everybody else.
And I will literally now just go, there comes like, if it seems like it's going to not go anywhere, it's like lights are up. I go, turn the lights on. I want to make sure everybody sees their face and get them out. And as soon as they're out, we'll get back to what we need to do. I'll give you an extra few minutes to make up for the time that it takes them out. And literally 10 out of 10 times, if they're bothering me, they're bothering other people too. And you get the clapping. I mean, I have a letter that it's disturbing that I ended up getting a letter to my home. Somehow my address is out there, but of a woman I just had to throw out, and her friends collectively got together and wrote me a letter, like handwritten letter apologizing for her.
Wow.
Yeah, nuts.
Wow. Comedy. This is what we do. Yeah. All right, Tammy, thank you so much for being here. I've been looking forward to this episode for a while, and it was a blast. Real quick, one last thing, just plug all your stuff to where people can find you.
Pescatelli.com is the best place. I am going to be doing a show at the Keswick, which is by you over there, if anybody's in the area, with No Apologies with Tom Cotter and Jim Florentine. It's either this summer or the fall, but definitely
come out. Oh, my God. Well, I will absolutely be there. I live a half hour away.
Oh, my gosh. Definitely come out and hang. That'll be fantastic.
Is that through Dino?
No, we do this show called No Apologies, the three of us. And
I love Tom. Tom is another comic. I was on vacation on a cruise, and he was the comic on board that week.
Wow. Odd dichotomy, the two of them.
Yeah. I would have never pictured Cotter and Florentine on the same lineup, to be honest with you.
Oh, no, it's fantastic.
I bet. Oh, my God.
It blends so well. Like, it's the three of us. It's like, I feel like I'm the sister that never shuts up. You got the one brother that's like always grumbling and complaining. The other one's just going, come on, fuck them.
And with that gravelly voice. Well, I will absolutely be there. Tammy Pescatelli, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait till we cross paths, and I will be there that night.
Thanks for having me.
You got it.